Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. Here we go. I want to start with this just very quickly, because this is an important subject. It's something I've brought up on the show before. And again, it continues to prove that in times like these, again, in any ongoing war and psychological operations, good and bad, propaganda, good and bad, there are always going to be people, again, who show their true colors, who jump ship, who lose hope. And they show you, again, that they don't have any courage whatsoever. And again, they also show you that they're incapable of learning and incapable of thinking and incapable of asking questions. And again, they might think that they have it all figured out. I certainly don't have it all figured out. That's why I continuously learn the best I can. And then you just move forward. I mean, you just move forward with any information that you have. Again, you can dive down endless rabbit holes anytime you want. But one of the things that I would, of course, never do, and I certainly don't think I've done it, is I wouldn't speak about a particular subject if I didn't know anything about it. And again, even if I had a particular subject in mind, I would do my best to do my due diligence on said subject before even speaking about it, certainly the best that I can. With that said, I want to revisit an individual specifically because, again, I saw this video the other day and I found it basically highly amusing because apparently this individual still hasn't learned, which is too bad. But I was watching a video the other day of Sabrina Wallace, and I've brought her up before, and I admire her and her work, and again, her trying to bring attention to the wireless body area network and digital twins and what all of this means. Of course, mass surveillance, nanotechnology, how our bodies are sensors themselves. They've always been. The government knows that, and then they develop particular technologies, of course, to harm us and track us and a number of other things. There's an individual, again, who has criticized Sabrina Wallace, which is Sarah Westall. And again, this is going to sound kind of gossipy here for a minute, so I apologize. But I'm bringing this up because, again, I think that this matters because it shows that certain individuals, again, just don't want to learn. And they'd rather just criticize and scream and shout rather than actually diving in a little bit deeper and actually asking questions. And these people are everywhere, which is, again, rather interesting. And who knows, maybe they serve a purpose to some extent, but what they don't get to do is dive into particular chat groups or go after particular individuals and then, of course, just criticize them blindly, while at the same time calling themselves investigative journalists when they're showing themselves and everybody else that they don't read and they don't do their due diligence and a number of other things. So, Sabrina Wallace, again, made a video where she was specifically commenting on Sarah Westall, again, basically jumping into particular chat rooms with her followers and again, openly criticizing the wireless body area network and how she doesn't want to panic about it and she doesn't think it's that big of a deal and whatever else. Sabrina Wallace, of course, disagrees with her. And then, of course, in sort of stereotypical fashion, unfortunately, Sarah Westall denies that particular things exist, and one of the books that Sabrina Wallace on a regular basis references is, in fact, a college textbook. I mean, it's published by Springer, which is a massive college textbook publication, certainly for, again, scientific papers and things of that nature. Again, with all of that said, it just continues to highlight how an individual, again, refuses to learn and refuses to understand something that does exist. The wireless body area network, again, in my opinion, and I'm not the only one that shares this, continues to be, again, in my opinion, one of the more dangerous aspects of what is going on currently in the world that we live in. Yes, of course, the medical industry and a number of other things, and I'll get into some of that because I think that's, of course, continuously being exposed. But like I said earlier, what a person doesn't get to do is criticize another for having, again, people can have different opinions, but ultimately, opinions, everybody has those. Just find a fact and then continue to discover facts and ask questions. And again, you don't have to do it publicly. You can do it privately. A person can ask questions to themselves. They can spend time home alone and they can do particular dives on the internet and they can read particular papers and they can watch particular videos and you can arrive at logical conclusions. But unfortunately, again, there are many people with very large audiences that do not do this. Take the Minneapolis fake shooting, for example. Why is it that all of the people with these massive audiences are not discussing the Minneapolis fake shooting? Why is it that they aren't diving down those rabbit holes and looking at the human behavior and then grasping the depth of the lie and the money laundering and the racketeering and the embezzlement that is going on with all of these fake shootings all of the time? And then, of course, the motives behind it and everything else. Why is it that a Sarah Westall doesn't do that? Why is it that other individuals don't do that? And again, I'm not even saying that Sabrina Wallace and herself personally has other issues figured out fully either. I'm certain she doesn't. I've heard her comment about particular things, and I'll go, I don't know about that. I don't know if she understands the depth of that particular issue, but she's brought it up. She's, again, passed it off. Well, I don't want to think about that. I don't care. And then, she, again, just sort of dismisses it as much as possible. I think everybody's guilty of that, probably myself included. But again, at the same time, sometimes all you have to do is let an individual continuously talk, and you'll sort of figure out where they stand on particular issues. And again, unfortunately, I think Sarah Westall is one of those people. These individuals, again, are everywhere. They're all over the place. Again, they have big audiences. But just because a person has a large audience doesn't make them right. Just because a person has a small audience doesn't make them right either. So I don't want to ramble too much about it, even though I already have to some extent. My point is that people have to be very, very careful. And they also, again, have to ask themselves a number of questions like, again, why are you not talking about this particular subject? Or if you're talking about a particular subject, why are you only discussing it in one way or in one avenue? Again, I'm not going to claim that I have everything figured out. I certainly don't. But given the fact that there are multiple operations taking place, there's multiple lines of intelligence and communications that are taking place and documentation and a number of other things, I don't think any one person is going to have every single thing figured out. I'll give you an example. I'm not sure that Sabrina Wallace would be able to play this tennis match, although maybe she could. Maybe she could understand that the wireless body area network, of course, was developed by government to be very terrible. But at the exact same time, what if there are individuals in government who know that that's the case? Who know that those technologies have been built, again, to make people sick and be terrible and attack individuals and be weaponized against human beings? So then a person would then have to ask themselves, well, what's their motive then? What's the good guy's motive in knowing what they know about bad plans? Take, for example, and I'll plead total ignorance on this, take, for example, the whole Golden Dome stuff regarding the United States. The moment that was mentioned, again, it was brought up as military defense. Well, it could be. But it could also, again, it could be something remarkably nefarious. Again, defense against what? Defense against the people from attacking individuals in government that maybe they want to go after? Is it, again, really a defense mechanism? Because, again, back in the day, certainly 10 years ago or so, one of the schemes that did exist that was widely discussed on the internet had to do with releasing an EMP in the sky, which, of course, relies on the wireless body area network because we are electric beings and everything around us is electric, including the sky. So releasing an EMP and the impact that would have on the United States. If you released it in a particular area, hospitals would shut down, everything would shut down. People wouldn't be able to access anything. And then you throw in, of course, the monkey wrench of digital currency in the middle of all of that, you really wouldn't be able to access anything. No one would be able to buy anything, pay for anything, you name it. All of these so-called, again, electric cars would stop working. So I wonder, again, if the Golden Dome aspect of this so-called defense mechanism that's being built around us is really a defense mechanism. Maybe it is. Maybe it's to protect against something like that from being used against us and even being used by deep state players within our own country against us. It's one of the things, again, that was speculated and alleged that that's what John McCain was going to be using. that John McCain was interested behind the scenes in communicating and was communicating with people within our own government to pull something like that off, to use an EMP in our country and then blame that on North Korea. And then before you know it, we're bombing the shit out of North Korea. Again, it's the same thing with the Ukraine-Russia dynamic. The deep state was using Ukraine as a proxy and as a money laundering hole. They were, again, trafficking children, running money, drugs, guns, the whole thing. And then they would stage some kind of an event in Ukraine, because that's how they operate. I mean, they would take over land, act like they're defending it when really they're not. They're just going to use it in the future and use these people as pawns. Because again, we're all just basically a giant chess game as far as they're concerned, and they move us around, so they think, any way that they want. And then some attack happens in Ukraine, and then before you know it, they blame Russia. The media runs it with it. Everybody believes it. Not everybody, but the vast majority might. And then before you know it, we're attacking Russia. And then China might come to the defense of Russia, and then before you know it, we're attacking China also, and then we're in a giant war. Again, I'm not even going to pretend to understand all the ins and outs of the defense systems that exist, quote unquote, in our country and what they're really used for. I do know that the wireless body area network is real, and it is very dangerous. I've written about it on Substack. I've put all the white papers out there. I have an entire section on my website about it. Anybody can, again, read that documentation, click on those hyperlinks, read the white papers anytime they want. It's legit. It's a real thing. And all you have to do, of course, is look around in society when you're out in public. Look at the Apple Watches that people are wearing. Listen to how many times people are talking about their Oura rings or their Fitbits or, a number of other stuff. And that's all small stuff, but it still matters. Ultimately, the human being itself is the wireless body area network too. And they can amplify 5G, they can amplify a number of different things within our environment, and then we become ill. But criticizing that blindly, like a Sarah Westall, is a huge mistake. And she exposes herself as a result of doing that. Now, let me give you another example. And this is another individual, again, who used to be very productive and all of a sudden stopped being productive at a very interesting time in American history. Back during the Q drops, there was an individual who went by the handle Neon Revolt. And Neon Revolt, again, was probably on all of the social media platforms, was certainly, again, on BitChute, may have produced some videos on Rumble, not entirely sure, maybe even YouTube back in the day, but again, was on Gab, may have been on X, not sure, don't really care. Either way, they basically got out of the fight, so to speak, and they even wrote a book, a rather very interesting book. I own a copy of it called Revolution Q. It's loaded with Q drops. It's loaded with pictures of political individuals in very compromising situations, a number of different things, and he connected a lot of dots. He got out of the fight, though, in January of 2021. Again, right around the time when Joe Biden got fake inaugurated. So the election was stolen. We were told that it was going to be stolen. Donald Trump was alluding that it was going to be stolen, that they were just going to take it, that the media was going to take the 2020 election, and they did. And then that, unfortunately, was a time in American history when a lot of people who supported our country, supported Donald Trump, and supported the truth movement and the Great Awakening, they snapped. And they just had these breakdowns or whatever. Or maybe they became compromised and somebody got to them, paid them off, said, now I need you to criticize Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden they did. They got a check in the mail. Who's to say? But again, even Vice wrote a hit piece on this individual. And again, they basically say that there's some, failed Hollywood screenwriter, so they say. And then they say that Neon Revolt's real name is Robert Cornero Jr. from Neptune City, New Jersey. So again, they decided to dox the individual and out who they really are and criticize him and whatever else. Well, who cares? See, none of that really matters. If the enemy criticizes you and you're on the side of the truth, then who cares? It's water off a duck's back. But apparently that wasn't the case with old Robert here. Again, apparently he went off the deep end. And one of the ways that you can find out whether or not these individuals can go off the deep end and how, again, easy it is for them to go off the deep end, sometimes all you have to do is get on one of their social media accounts and criticize one of their posts. So again, it's rather obvious here that Neon Revolt is on Gab. Anybody can look him up. And he made a post the other day, again, criticizing Donald Trump and calling him a cuck faggot and 1,000 other things. Again, the name calling is hilarious, but it's not productive. He says, let me see here. He was posting the truth post again of that Donald Trump reposted from X, where he's got the Q plus in his left hand, and it says, "The world will soon understand. Nothing can stop what is coming." Neon Revolt reposted that and said 8 blank, and then it's whatever ing, so he's cursing. He could just curse, but I don't know why he doesn't. 8 whatever years of blue balls is enough, you Israel-worshipping GOP cuck faggots. So Neon Revolt's not just making fun of Donald Trump, he's making fun of anybody who read the Q posts, learned from the Q posts, and can see all of the D-class and all of the information and everything that's actually happening right now. He's now flipped 180 degrees. And he's, again, making fun of these people. This is, again, one of the ways that you can figure out when someone's either stupid or compromised or both. And then he reposted this, which was Gavin Newsom's press office on X, and their post where it was Gavin Newsom in the same pose as Donald Trump. And then Neon Revolt said, "I hope @real Donald Trump sees this so he can see what a joke it's all become." Well, the Q movement isn't a joke. It's very real. And he should know that because he wrote a book about it. So again, to take the time to write a huge book about Q posts and the political deep state and Satanism and how bad everything is and the real world, and then all of a sudden do a 180-degree turn is odd. Again, are they typing on their X or on their Gab account rather from a padded room? I mean, I have no idea. But anyway, this is again how you can test to see how basically fragile these people are. So I said the following. I replied on Gab, and I said, "Be careful. I hear there are seats available for those dining on Crow. One might have your name on it." That's all I said. And then he flipped out. And again, the responses are hilarious because at the end of all of this, he responded once, and then he blocked me. So here's what he said next. He replied to that to me, and he said, again, I wouldn't normally read this because it doesn't matter. But I'm bringing it up only because this kind of behavior and these people with these massive accounts, just because somebody has a huge account doesn't make them right. Again, look at BioClandestine on X. This individual has a massive account. And sometimes they'll openly admit that they don't have it all figured out, but they're certain that people died in the Minneapolis church shooting. They're certain. And they, of course, took the whole tranny angle, which is embarrassing. But anyway, that's, again, is a wavelength of thought on that particular subject that a lot of people do not go down, which is too bad, because there's a lot of deception. So anyway, Neon Revolt replied to me and said, "Just what goes through your brain when posting something like this?" Then he said, "Is 8 years of delay not enough for you? What do you want it to be, a whole decade? Can you not admit that the serial inaction and broken promises are not worthy of, at the very least, questioning, if not outright speculation?" Now, that's not a complete sentence, and I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, he went on, said, "Can you at least address the big inaccuracies Q told, like, quote, trust Barr, quote unquote, and trust Kansas, quote unquote?" Now, that's really petty and stupid, because even he should know that in those Q drops, disinformation is necessary. So just because Q puts a post out that says trust Barr, trust Kansas, implying trust Mike Pompeo, doesn't mean that we should. Although, again, who's to say? It's deception. It's war. That's the point. He went on, he wasn't done, and said, "Or are you just another bleeding boomer sycophant who will accomplish precisely nothing except stroking his own ego and leaving an even bigger mess in his wake before the end of his days, because it was more of a dopamine hit for his central nervous system to pretend like he was winning than to actually put in the hard work to win. Again, this person doesn't know who I am. They don't know what I've done. They don't listen to the show. They have no idea who I am. And I call them out on it later, and then, of course, they claim that they do know who I am, but they clearly don't. Not to mention that entire thing right there is what's called psychological projection. I mean, they're talking about themselves, putting in a lot of work, and then, again, thinking that it's all for nothing. Then he said, laughing my ass off, eating crow, quote unquote. You've been force-fed crow for the last 4 years now, but you're too dumb to realize it. Literally, human cattle, go back to mooing. That was his whole response to me when all I said is be careful. I hear there's seats available for those dining on crow. One might have your name on it. Because again, Neon Revolt's on Gab all of the time, just bashing people for what? Some of his criticism is legit. Some of it is completely out of left field and a bit asinine. So anyway, I replied. I said, I own your book. It was well done. Now you're a coward who has become the thing you hate, operating like everything happens on your timeline. Your response proves my point. I said, kill yourself then, if you have nothing left in your tank. It sounds like you don't. And I've, of course, said that on the show. I'm shocked that all of these doomers don't just walk off a cliff. Because if everything is hopeless and nothing good is happening in the world, then why live? I mean, what are you living for? What are you waiting around for then? So I went on and I said, like in all war, people quit, and they quit at different stages. In this stage, this far in, is what I said. You have quit. I haven't. We are not the same. He responded. And he wouldn't stop responding. I mean, it was hilarious because I knew at this point what I was doing. I was just egging him on, and it doesn't take much to egg these people on. It's just like Sarah Westall. Again, I emailed Sarah Westall, and I described those emails, even though I still have them. They're very long. But again, I would ask her a series of questions, and she wouldn't answer me. And then she'd say, you need to leave me alone. I don't like all these people picking on me. And it's like, we're not picking on you. We're trying to understand why you arrived at the wavelength of thought that you've arrived at. But Neon Revolt went on and said, who is the real coward? Someone who wrote a book once, or someone who needs an internet stranger, it's not a complete sentence, to validate every little thought because they can't think for themselves and melts down and tells people to kill themselves because of the questions and frustrations they raised. Are you really that insecure that mere questions, total valid questions, derail you so? Well, he didn't ask me any questions, but whatever. He went on and said, quit. Quit, he says, like he has any clue what he's talking about. You're right, we're not the same because you don't have a clue what you're talking about, and you couldn't possibly shoulder a fraction of the burden I have been forced to bear. You're already feasting on crow, but you don't even know it. And that wasn't the end of it. I responded, and I said, you called me a boomer. If you had 1 ounce of due diligence in your body, you would have made 2 clicks on my site, and you would have known who I am. Your burden is your problem. I've done more than you, of this I guarantee. You're exactly what Dr. Joseph Goebbels warned people about. Those in war who turn on their country were never for it in the first place. You don't have the longevity nor the relevance to remain, which is why you won't. You need a nap. Bye. And then a smoochy emoji face. I was doing this, of course, to egg him on. And it worked. This was the point. Because at this point, he's unstable. He goes on, and again, this is basically a manifesto now. Here's what he said, and this, again, proves that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and it doesn't take much to, again, move these people around in order to prove that they don't know what they're talking about. He said, quote, Oh, I did go to your website, and and that's what actually convinced me. I asked if you were a boomer because your style, mannerisms, inability to do anything but bristle at questions, he never asked me any, and everything you subsequently wrote is indistinguishable from every other holier than thou, better than thou, born on third base, thinking he hit a grand slams boomer I've ever encountered in the wild. He's not done. Again, he sounds medicated. He sounds either on drugs or drunk or something. He says, but given your repeated inability to distinguish between questions and declarations, I will now definitely declare that you are, in a phrase, a spiritual boomer, which is where it really counts. I don't even know what that means. He goes on and says, which I suppose makes you a boomer minus the beach house and pension, which is to say a poor boomer. He goes on and says, and it's funny you, Mr. Boomer sycophant, proclaiming my irrelevance when in all your time sucking off the choir, you've barely managed to crack over 300 views on any given episode of your podcasts. My haphazard posts here on Gab routinely get more attention, and I think that must irk you quite a bit. You wouldn't be the first to try to dress up his rotten envy in a cloak of some kind of vague ideological purity test wherein the accused can do nothing but fail to jump high enough to your liking, as though you, in your pit of ignorance and unknowing, have any bearing on that at all, and the idea that anyone, especially myself, should care what you think. He's not done. He went on and said, and I suppose that's the difference between you and I. It's you and me, but whatever. Grammar. In that I don't care if no one tunes in at the end of the day. My entire audience could vanish overnight and I wouldn't care one iota. You, however, can barely cling hard enough to the scraps of an audience you have, pulling publicity stunts and slandering your betters in a desperate bid for attention. I don't even know what he's talking about. He says, and when you fail at this, I am portrayed as the bad guy, quote unquote, in this equation because you must at the very least try to save face. Again, they sound like they're on drugs. They go on and say, and the ultimate irony of it all is that if you knew what my burden was, you wouldn't dare question my purity, because to do so would be to tarnish your own. I've been tested in ways you can't imagine, Mr. Holier Than Thou, no, not that Oxford PhD sycophant. Again, what does that even mean? So keep groveling on your knees in front of the choir, but I promise you won't find an original thought down there. That was all one post. Again, it's laughable, and then it got even more funny. I responded, and I simply said, wow, you even write and whine like a woman too. I rest my case. Smiley face, laughy emoji. Okay. Again, I'm not disparaging women. I'm just saying, like, that was a very long explanation for something that made no sense. Yeah. Anyway, and then he responded and he said the man who can't even withstand being called a boomer without having a meltdown in the comments section. Well, I didn't have a meltdown. I think he did. Anyway, he goes on and says, and you write like a narcissistic fraud with a padded resume. Pack up your faggotry and go hawk it somewhere else. Again, what does that even mean? A narcissistic fraud with a padded resume. This is how, again, you can expose these frauds and these turncoats very easily. Again, the people that don't want to learn or the people that stop learning. I mean, you've heard me say it before 1,000 times, and I grew up with this philosophy and I applied it when I taught school. You stop being an effective educator when you stop being a student. And I remember I even said that to some coworkers once, And they looked at me like I was crazy. And I was like, wait a minute. So you don't learn? You've just stopped learning? Because eventually, again, you keep learning, you're going to figure out what the truth is. And that's not a bad thing. So anyway, I responded and I said, I don't write diary manifestos like a middle school girl when someone disagrees with me. Not so with you, kitten. Laughy face emoji, crying, of course. I said, good to know. Thanks for playing. This was fun. That's what I said. And then here's what they said before they blocked me, which is hilarious. They actually, again, they made this last post and then they blocked me so that I couldn't respond, but I don't care. They said, aw, who's a good whittle pawn twister? Again, they're misspelling everything on purpose, like they're, again, on drugs, or like they're trying to talk like Tweety from Looney Tunes. Who's going to get a gold star from Mr. President Trump himself? You are! Exclamation point. That's right! Exclamation point. You are. You is the bestest and brightest anon ever. Gold star for Trump's #1 digital soldier! Exclamation point. That's how they responded. Again, the reason that I read all of that was to just tell you that these people are everywhere. That the people with massive accounts, with lots of different followers, that's literally their resume. I mean, he wants to bring up a resume. That's his resume. His resume is the number of people he's never known or met who click on a particular thing. Again, I'm only interested in the truth. And I understand criticism, and I get it. But his kind of criticism is lazy. Again, he's just like the Steve Bannon back on the fake inauguration when Joe Biden was being fake inaugurated. Steve Bannon was there believing it, having a meltdown. No one's going to save us, whatever, we got to fight through this and XYZ. Well, no kidding. I don't think anybody said we were going to get saved. Where in those Q posts did it even say that or allude to that? It doesn't. It's up to us. It's up to us individuals, again, to learn about everything on a global level, apply it locally as best we can, educate the people that we can when we can, and again, try to make a positive difference and highlight evil, again, at the local level, because that's where we can have some control, and then move on from there. But again, I'm just pointing out that these individuals are all over the place. Again, if you've ever seen a war movie, or you've ever actually been in an actual physical war, of which I have not, but we are certainly living through one. It's an information war. It's a psychological war. There's a lot of different things going on, of course, on a global level and nationally, and people are dying. That's a very real thing. Everybody still has to watch people die from the COVID shots and get sick and get ill and have chronic illnesses and all the symptoms that have come with it and a number of other things. I mean, this is happening. This is a very real thing. But again, people show themselves when they stop learning. And certainly, again, when they start to criticize or can't handle a particular criticism, then those are the individuals, again, that are certainly the most fragile. Or again, they're just not well. I'm not sure if it's one, both, or one or the other, or both, but it's interesting. And again, these people are everywhere. Sarah Westall is another one of them. And again, a lot of these individuals, of course, Neon Revolt hasn't created anything. So, beyond the book that they wrote, and again, they used to write articles and used to have a website, and they stopped doing that 5 years ago. Again, that moment in January of 2021 was really a tipping point for a great deal of people. It's when a lot of people jumped ship and they quit. They stopped learning. They got over emotional. They started yelling and screaming. We've been betrayed. We've been lied to. Donald Trump's just, another Zionist and this, that, and the other. There's ample evidence out there that proves that that's not the case, not to mention what's going on now. It should just show people, again, that name-calling and criticism and a number of other things does expose an individual. And again, I know people would say, well, Sean, you were calling him a girl and a woman and, XYZ and 1,000 other things. That was very deliberate because I knew that he was clearly unstable. So by basically knocking him down a peg you can see again how these people respond. He didn't have to say anything. He could have let the criticism exist, but he's one of those individuals again on social media or on the internet where the moment they're criticized, they instantly have to justify their position and literally try to change your mind and get you to again agree with them no matter what. Again, the way that people communicate too is very interesting. As I've said before, Sarah Westall was on Dave Janda's radio show out of Michigan, and she's kind of a consistent guest. She'll be on whatever, once a month or once every couple of months or whatever it is. And even Dave Janda will be on her show. And as I said on the show once, she was on his show and she was marveling at all of the declass and all of this, how all of this information was being declassified. And she goes, I don't know, Dr. Janda, I just feel like something else is going on here. Like we're missing something, like something else is going on. And it's like, yeah, it certainly is. This has never happened before in American history. Documents being released that are showing the truth about the real world that we live in. That's what all those Q posts were about to begin with, along with being, again, a number of other things. Its own operation, its own timeline, knowing that the enemy was reading those posts, that bad politicians were reading those posts, and that they were panicking. In fact, it leads me to this point now. I'm going to get off of that, but it's kind of the same wavelength. Are you paying attention to the number of resignations that have happened here in America, specifically with politicians? It's overwhelming. And again, in those Q posts, we were told, watch the resignations, pay attention to the resignations. That if these individuals in Congress and in the Senate are leaving, they're leaving because we've gotten to them. Someone has gotten to them, i.e. the good guys or whomever, and told them, you're going to leave office now. Again, these are lifers. These are people who have been around a long time and would hold the seat until their dying day if they could. And they're very old, many of them. But again, just within this year, endless people have resigned here. We've got, let me see here, it's at least 28 congressmen, and I'd say almost, just under a dozen senators. So here's what it says. It says, the following senators whose terms end in January 2027, Class 2, have announced that they will not seek re-election in 2026. Dick Durbin, Democrat out of Illinois. Mitch McConnell, Republican out of Kentucky. Janine Shaheen, Democrat out of New Hampshire. Tina Smith, Democrat out of Minnesota. Gary Peters, Democrat out of Michigan. Tom Tillis, Republican out of North Carolina. And Joni Ernst, Republican out of Iowa. Again, those are lifers. Those are rhinos. Those are clearly some of the worst that government has to offer. Why are they leaving? Are they leaving because they're tired? Or are they leaving because they got caught? How about the U.S. House of Representatives? These are people, again, not seeking re-election in 2026. Some are retiring for other offices, again, while others are leaving political life completely. Danny Davis, Democrat out of Illinois. Let's see, Don Bacon, Republican out of Nebraska. Dwight Evans, Democrat out of Pennsylvania. Jan Schakowsky, Democrat out of Illinois. A Lloyd Doggett, Democrat out of Texas, due to redistricting, potentially. Andy Barr, Kentucky Republican. And he's retiring, it says, to run for Mitch McConnell's Senate seat. Let's see. Angie Craig, Democrat out of Minnesota, retiring to run for Senate in Minnesota. Barry Moore, Republican out of Alabama, retiring to run for Senate in Alabama. Buddy Carr, Republican out of Georgia, retiring to run for Senate in Georgia. Chris Pappas, Democrat out of New Hampshire, retiring to run for Senate in New Hampshire. Hallie Stevens, Democrat out of Michigan, here we go, retiring to run for Senate in Michigan. Mike Collins, Republican out of Georgia, retiring to run for Senate in Georgia. Kaj, no way I get that last name, some Indian individual, Democrat, Illinois, retiring to run for Senate in Illinois. Robin Kelly, Democrat out of Illinois. A lot of Illinois resignations here. Retiring for a run in the Senate for Illinois. Chip Roy, Republican, retiring to run for Texas Attorney General. John Rose, Republican out of Tennessee, retiring to run for Tennessee governor. John James, Republican out of Michigan, retiring to run for Michigan governor. Ralph Norman, Republican, South Carolina, retiring to run for governor of South Carolina. Andy Biggs, Arizona Republican, retiring to run for Arizona governor. Mark Green, Republican, Tennessee, stepping down July 20th. He already did, potentially retiring or seeking other roles. Mike Waltz, Republican out of Florida. Of course, he was in the Trump administration, got fired. Tommy Tuberville, Republican out of Alabama, retiring to run for governor of Alabama. Total count as of August 25th, 28 members of Congress, 7 senators, and 21 representatives have announced that they will not seek re-election in 2026. This includes those retiring from public office and those seeking other offices. It's not that they're leaving Congress even for bad reasons necessarily. Sometimes they're not. Maybe they're, again, just getting away from the nonsense that exists in D.C., and they feel like they can have more of a local impact. And it's not, again, to say that every single one of them is dirty. Certainly the vast majority would be, but, again, who's to say? But this amount of resignations is unprecedented. Apparently, even NPR reported that it is a record number of lawmakers, 9 senators total and 22 House members, as of August 21st, 2025, are not seeking re-election. And of course, the excuse that they put forth is, well, it's partisan gridlock and personal decisions. Well, that's a political answer. What if there's other answers as to why they're leaving? Again, a person can't say nothing is happening. And if all hope is lost, then why go on? What's the point? But if a person, again, can read between the lines and can even think about reading between the lines, then that's really an interesting place to exist also. Let me give you this one. This was interesting. The New York Times the other day, on Monday, Labor Day, September 1st, 2025, on their cover, they had a picture of 2 girls dressed up like Alice in Wonderland on the front porch of a house, what looks like the front porch of a house. The caption below the picture, again, it's basically a story having to do allegedly with a school that burned down in the wildfire in California, the Altadena, California wildfire apparently. And it says, magic arises from tragedy for a school raised by the January, or razed, I guess, by the January wildfire in Altadena, California, staging Alice in Wonderland created a haven of normalcy. Again, it's an odd photograph, and people online, certainly those who paid attention to the Q posts, fully understand the connotation there, that Alice and Wonderland has a direct connotation to Hillary Clinton and Saudi Arabia. Post 83, for example, says, simplified, Alice and, an ampersand, Wonderland, period. Hillary and Saudi Arabia. References, Hillary Clinton in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, Saudi Arabia, The Bloody Wonderland, Q. Point being, Hillary Clinton traffics children, Saudi Arabia, before the current king who exists there now, was allowing these children to be trafficked, drugged, murdered, the whole thing. And again, we were being told that back in November of 2027. That was the direct implication. Again, I understand it's a stretch for a great deal of people. I mean, they would interpret it as a stretch and they would say, well, you sound like a crazy person. But again, this is one of the ways that we've sort of been taught on how to look at particular things, and certainly information and news headlines, is we have to pay attention to these kinds of things, just like, again, pay attention to the resignations of politicians and CEOs. All of that's very interesting. It's not a coincidence. I mean, it is intentional. So the bad guys do communicate with one another, and they, of course, use their bad guy outlets to do that. Why would they not? The volume number, by the way, of the actual newspaper itself is volume number 60629. People online were looking this up, and apparently it's Barack Obama's former district in the south side of Chicago. That's the number designation of that particular district is 60629. Again, just happens to be the exact New York Times copy with the two girls dressed up like Alice from Alice in Wonderland. It's weird and it's creepy, but again, it's not accidental, I don't think. Again, speaking of communications, and this is happening all the time. The constant back and forth of hidden communications and communications out right in front of people's faces, again, is not accidental. Donald Trump made a couple of comments the other day that are very interesting, certainly when it comes to the medical industry. And as I'm recording this, he's about an hour and a half away from speaking in the Oval Office. So, my apologies. I'm probably not going to get to that in this particular episode. Apparently, he's going to, again, speak about crime and D.C. and going to Chicago and the whole thing. And, of course, you're seeing everybody panic in Chicago. I mean, you're seeing everybody, all those politicians going there and openly saying, like, he doesn't have the constitutional right to do what he's doing. Well, of course he does. Of course he does. And the reason that they don't want him there is the same way that a child doesn't want their parent in their bedroom. They're afraid they're going to catch something. They're going to find something that they don't want to find, or they're going to find something that they don't want the other person to find. Again, this is why exposing these people, certainly on their end, is so easy to do. We say, hey, we're going to knock on your front door, invite us in, and they go, oh, you're not allowed here. You're not allowed to come here. Well, why not? I have the constitutional right to, and we have the constitutional right to fix what's going on in your particular city and in your state. What do you mean you don't want us around? What do you have to hide? This is from Inside Paper. It says Trump demands drug companies, including Pfizer, to release full COVID drug data to prove whether Operation Warp Speed was truly as effective as claimed. I'm going to read his truth post here again. It's the art of war, and it's perfect. It's the art of the deal, too. He's putting their back right into a corner. It says it is very important that the drug companies justify the success of their various COVID drugs. Many people think they are a miracle that saved millions of lives. Others disagree! ! With CDC being ripped apart over this question, I want the answer and I want it now. I have been shown information from Pfizer and others that is extraordinary, but they never seem to show those results to the public. Why not? Again, that alone right there is not a question that anybody in the past would ask Pfizer or any of these other drug companies. He goes on, says they go off to the next hunt and let everyone rip themselves apart, including Bobby Kennedy Jr. and CDC, trying to figure out the success or failure of the drug companies' COVID work. They show me great numbers and results, but they don't seem to be showing them to many others. I want them to show them now, to CDC and the public, and clear up this mess, one way or the other! I hope Operation Warp Speed was as brilliant as many say it was. If not, we all want to know about it and why. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter, President DJT, unquote. Again, Operation Warp Speed is not what a lot of people think that it is. The reason for the emergency use authorization was so that they couldn't lock us down. Again, you hear about people, in particular in the UK, casually calling what they experienced their lockdown. When we were in lockdown, when we were in lockdown, when I was in lockdown, we were not in lockdown here. There was no lockdown. Didn't happen. Which is, again, why we hear foreigners discuss it and we shake our heads like, what are you talking about? We could have gone wherever we wanted to go. We loved the confrontation. We loved yelling at people, yelling at us for not wearing a mask. Well, you're not allowed in here because you're not wearing a mask. Oh, yeah? Watch me. And then we'd walk in and do whatever we wanted to do. We love the confrontation here in America. A lot of people didn't, of course. They were like, yes, I'll wear a mask. I'll do what I have to do because I don't want to rock the boat. Well, rocking the boat is you forfeiting your rights. Operation Warp Speed was about speeding up the enemy's plans to push out the shots faster than the enemy wanted to. That was the point. And then, of course, some were placebos and some were not. Which is why, again, some people are walking around with zero ill effects and other people are dead. Heartbreaking story I just read the other day. I even put it on X. A woman back in, let's see, what was it? 2021. I believe it was May of 2021. Took their first Johnson & Johnson shot, and the very next day they were dead. Young, healthy woman. Just like that. That goes on all the time and did go on all of the time. Not to mention, of course, all of the court-ordered material and side effects and studies that have been released that were designed to be hidden from the public for 70 plus years were all released. And that information, of course, is available on my website under the medical documents tab. But a lot of people already know about all of that. A lot of people don't. A lot of people are still dead asleep. But again, by making such a statement, you're basically saying, okay, medical industry, give me what you have on the thing you created. And he's openly saying, if I was wrong on the one-dimensional wavelength of thought of Donald Trump saying, get your shots, you got to get your shots. If people, again, believed him and just did what a politician told them what to do, well, that's their fault. But rushing it, again, out into the public and speeding up this horrible plan that they had for all of us, which was to stay locked down and then inject us until we're all dead and we can't do anything until we're all injected. That's why, of course, they had multiple shots out there. They had multiple shots because they knew that there were placebos out there. The bad guys did. And they were like, well, we got to get multiple shots then and tell them to consistently take them. That way, they'll end up hitting the poisonous shots at least one time. Maybe even twice or more. Again, that was the purpose for the multiple shot thing, because the multiple shot thing was something that's never happened before. Not ever. Well, you need to take 2 shots within 6 months because that's the best way for you to stay healthy. That alone should have raised everybody's suspicion. Wait a minute. Wait a second. You want me to do what? You've never even mentioned this before in the past, but now you want me to do this? There's always something else going on is the whole point. But that statement right there is a big statement. That's a big deal. He's making them provide information that already exists. But the brainwashed public, again, not to disparage anybody, but again, the people who are unaware that that information already exists, he's forcing these medical companies now to provide that information even to them. You better believe, again, that the enemy's got stuff planned here because they don't want this information hitting the mainstream. It's September. This is supposed to be vaccine month. This is supposed to be the month, again, where RFK is supposed to drop some bombs about the poison vaccines and the whole thing. I mean, even Sarah Westall, of all people, did an episode with Dr. Joseph Ladapo the other day. And again, they're just kind of bouncing back and forth about what Operation Warp Speed was, and neither one of them really know. They don't really know. Certainly the alternative wavelength of thought of what that was really about. But if you didn't have the emergency use authorization, then they could have, again, forced it on people and actually made it mandatory. It wasn't mandatory, but people, again, believed that it was because their employer told them, well, you have to take this or else. You'll lose your job or else. And now, of course, because emergency use authorization has been lifted, the legal advantage of all of that is that it apparently does not allow these vaccine companies and these so-called medical companies, it doesn't keep them free from liability. They can be sued. Praying Medic News over on Telegram said the following: Trump is suggesting either he or the public was misled by COVID vaccine makers about efficacy. He said immunity from litigation under emergency use authorization is nullified when a vaccine maker knowingly engages in deceptive practices, unquote. Yeah, there's that word knowingly again. And they did knowingly do it. You think Donald Trump wouldn't be saying what he's saying if he didn't know that too? He's aware. He has to be aware. He also made a comment having to do again with Israel the other day, which was an interesting one. And it could be taken a couple of different ways, but it's still an interesting comment. And it was put out again by Disclosed TV. And here was the comment, and I'll give you the whole paragraph. He said the following, quote, "Yeah, I'm aware of it." He was again being asked about, it says, Republicans, especially younger Republicans who are skeptical of our support for Israel, are you aware of this group? Are you worried about it? Here's what he said. He said, "Yeah, I'm aware of it. So Israel is amazing because I have good support from Israel. I have." He goes on here and he says, "Look, nobody has done more for Israel than I have, including the recent attack with Iran, wiping that thing out. That plane, wiped them out like nobody ever saw before. We got back, and CNN was trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't complete, and it turned out totally complete beyond complete. But if you go back 20 years, I will tell you, Israel had the strongest lobby in Congress of anything or body or of any company or corporation or state that I've ever seen. Israel was the strongest. Today, it doesn't have that strong a lobby. It's amazing." Interesting. He goes on and says, "There was a time where you couldn't speak bad. If you wanted to be a politician, you couldn't speak badly. But today you have, AOC +3, and you have all these lunatics, and they've changed it. You're too young to know this, but if you go back 15 years, probably that's when it started, right?" And then he says, "Israel, you would understand this very much. Israel was the strongest lobby I've ever seen. They had total control over Congress, and now they don't. I'm a little surprised to see that. And people, they forget about October 7th. October 7th was a truly horrible day because I've seen the pictures." Again, the person went on and said, "I was just over in Israel and we went right up to the war where you could hear the bombs dropping in Gaza. And we went to the places from October 7th, scary being in it, I understand." And Trump said, "It was a really bad one, right?" And the guy said, "Yeah." Again, he's openly again, I understand the different takes on it, but he's openly also saying that Israel used to have more control over these people, and you couldn't even say bupkis about them, but that's changed now. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene's out there bashing Israel and bashing Netanyahu. Good. That's a very good thing. The tide's changed a little bit. Certainly, again, over the last 10 to 15 years. That's not a bad thing. Ariel over on X then said this regarding that particular post. They said, "Here's their take on how I think Donald Trump pulled this off. Trump orchestrated the erosion of Israel's iron grip on Congress through a calculated blitz of back-channel maneuvers starting in his first term, leveraging explosive dossiers from seized Epstein files and classified NSA intercepts to neutralize key compromise lawmakers, think honey trap operations in Tel Aviv, safe houses, and offshore slush funds funneled via AIPAC proxies that once ensnared dual citizen senators like those with hidden Israeli passports stashed in Langley vaults. By 2024, with his MAGA allies flooding the Hill, he amplified anti-interventionist voices, exposing Mossad-orchestrated blackmail rings that had puppeted votes on aid packages worth billions while quietly greenlighting Justice Department probes into foreign agent registrations that clipped the wings of lobbyists who sold out for shekels and sinecures. I'm saying that right. October 7th's fallout merely accelerated the purge as public outrage over Gaza atrocities shattered the facade, turning once unbreakable alliances into fractured relics and handing Trump the reins to reshape U.S. policy unchecked. And they simply asked, "What is your take?" He responded to his own post and said, "Do you know who I am talking about? An illustrative case of such influence erosion involves a prominent U.S. senator, previously aligned with pro-Israel interests through dual citizenship affiliation who faced exposure of financial improprieties tied to undisclosed foreign donations in 2019 through 2020. This leverage. Who is the senator? And they said, I'll give you a hint. He blocked arms sales to Israel. And it's Dick Durbin. Again, Dick Durbin was one of 17 senators to do that. But the point that he's making is that there was a time when everybody was all for Israel. Everybody voted for everything for Israel all of the time, and that's not the case. And it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too. Maybe a lot of those Republican resignations that I mentioned earlier, they're getting out of Congress because they're tired of the Israeli lobby. They're tired of having to deal with them, and maybe they don't want to deal with them anymore, and maybe they don't have to deal with them anymore, certainly if they leave positions. Again, who's to say? But it's interesting. I just find all of this fascinating. This constant back and forth. Again, it's warfare. It's deception. It's psychological operations constantly. And then, of course, there's clearly a plan in place where this is all being rolled out, all of these revelations regarding a great many things, one piece at a time. Again, I don't think it's an accident. It just can't be. It's too coordinated. This stuff is too coordinated. Now, on the education front, I've got one story here. This is rather interesting also, but this has been going on for a very long time, and a lot of people are unaware that their money's just been stolen. And it's always been stolen. And again, foreigners have always gotten a so-called leg up and been allowed to be first in line and even had discounted, if not free, tuition. This is from Breitbart, and it was titled, Bondi Win, No More In-State Tuition Discounts for Kentucky Illegal Aliens. The headline alone. Again, in-state discounts existed for illegal aliens in the state of Kentucky for tuition, for universities and colleges. That should piss off everybody who's ever been an American who's gone to college in Kentucky, but they aren't the only ones. It says illegal immigrants will no longer get the benefit of lower in-state tuition in Kentucky after a lawsuit by Attorney General Pam Bondi resulted in a settlement to end the practice. Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman told Fox News Digital of the agreement between the federal government and Commonwealth educators in an interview on last Thursday. Coleman told the news outlet that the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, KCPE, agreed to change state policy 2 months after the Justice Department filed suit, alleging Kentucky's tuition practice violated federal law. Quote, under current federal law, any illegal immigrant is barred from eligibility for post-secondary education benefits like in-state tuition unless the same benefits are offered to every U.S. citizen, unquote, Coleman said. No state can be allowed to treat Americans like second-class citizens in their own country by offering financial benefits to illegal aliens, said Attorney General Pamela Bondi when the suit was filed in June. The lawsuit was built on a previous successful lawsuit against Texas educators over similar in-state tuition practice favorable to illegal aliens, according to the Department of Justice, and it goes on and on. You get the point. That's been happening this entire time. It's exhausting. There was another story, too, from Just the News, and it had to do, again, with there have been 1 million illegal aliens that have been removed from the American workforce. 1 million. Good. It frees it up for Americans to have those jobs. And no, they're not all picking fruit jobs and cleaning hotel rooms. I mean, it's a lot of jobs. Illegal aliens were taking over jobs that, again, weren't those particular jobs necessarily. That's not a bad thing. Now, let me mention this again on the medical front, and I'll kind of start to wrap it up here a little bit. Kind of a shorter episode here. But this was from the West Report on X. And here's what they said again regarding a lot of these medical revelations that are happening here. Again, there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. You can do the slow rollout, where you slowly eliminate a lot of different things that are taking place that have been horrible for all of us, certainly over the course of time. Or again, you throw a cold bucket of water on these people, and you eliminate all of these agencies and all of these drugs and these poisons instantly. I think that the former has to be the way to do it. Yes, we'd all like to see the latter be the actual option. But to wake people up slowly and to expose a great deal of these people, if you do it the slow way, although it's meticulous and it's clearly thought out very well, then that's going to expose, again, all of the deep state players this entire time, hence the former CDC director who, again, was cut loose. That's because the fight's taking place within the CDC and even within the FDA and HHS. I mean, these people are exposing themselves as not wanting to be moved out of their positions. But again, they don't have a choice. There is a plan here, again, to reset the entire medical industry. Of that, I have no doubt. I don't like RFK's comments about everybody's going to have a wearable in 4 years. I mean, that's asinine. There's no reason to do that. It's bad for people's health. It's an unnecessary convenience. But, again, just don't participate. That's all. But again, this was from the West Report, and it says the following: the changes coming to America's broken healthcare system. Trump's Maha Commission dropped 3 bold strategies the media ignored. They have even stunned pharma execs with a major threat, of course, the one that I mentioned earlier. Since no one's talking about it, here's what's really happening. It says the statistics are terrifying. Over 40% of American kids now have at least one chronic health issue. But here's the number that stopped Trump cold during the White House briefing. It says the autism rates are 1 in 10,000 children just a decade ago, or were. Today, it's 1 in 31 children. Trump's exact words, there's something wrong, has to be artificially induced, has to be, quote unquote. This is where the real story begins. It says the Maha Commission delivered their reports in exactly 98 days. 4 root causes identified: ultra-processed foods, environmental toxins, chronic stress and inactivity, and over-medicalization of children. Now, I'm going to stop there real quick. Sean Hibler has another documentary that's going to be on Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime, of all places, about chemtrails. Now, I don't know if he interviewed Alana Freeland for his chemtrail documentary. He should have, but if he didn't, that's fine. I mean, she's an expert in the field, too. And he's got some other past guests that he's had on some other documentaries, I believe, within this particular documentary. But again, the fact that a chemtrail documentary, and he's already made one, by the way, which was back on YouTube many years ago, and it was very well done. But the simple fact, again, that there's a chemtrail documentary going to be on Amazon Prime is a big deal. That's a shift in the consciousness of what's going on here. It is the Great Awakening, after all. The West Report went on and said to solve that, Trump has 3 distinct strategies, again, regarding all of these poisons, which of course include vaccination. Strategy number 1, attack the food system. Trump approved SNAP waivers to remove junk food from food stamps. Nebraska signed it, Indiana signed it, Iowa signed it. Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins said, quote, this has never happened before under Republican or Democrat administrations. They said, but wait, there's more. The FDA is now phasing out 8 common artificial food dyes. And again, side note, I understand people are whining about food dyes. Going, that's not the problem. The problem's other stuff like vaccinations and this, that, and the other. Look, one thing at a time here. We can't snap our fingers and wave a magic wand and have it all go away. I would love for that to be the case, but that's not how you dismantle this system. You have to do it brick by brick. And then every now and again, you take a bigger swing. But that's what's going on here. People weren't even talking about food dyes 10 years ago. It wasn't even being brought up. They went on and said, and they're targeting something called GRAS oversight, quote unquote. GRAS oversight, the system that lets food companies self-regulate their own additives. The food industry is quietly panicking. Strategy number 2, the pharmaceutical shock. It said on May 12th, Trump signed, quote, the most favored nation, unquote, executive order. His demand, drug companies have 30 days to match the lowest prices paid anywhere in the world or face mandatory price cuts of 50 to 89%. Trump's exact threat to pharma CEOs, quote, we pay the lowest country anywhere in the world, and that's what we're going to be paying, unquote. Quote, if you don't do it, we're going to not do business with that country or those countries, unquote. The industry called it their nightmare scenario. And then it says, here's what most people miss. Trump isn't just threatening the companies. He's threatening entire countries that give their citizens cheap drugs while Americans pay 10 times more. His leverage, trade wars, tariffs, export restrictions. This changes everything. The current system, Europe pays $20 for a drug. America pays $240 for the same drug. Big Pharma keeps total profits. Trump system, everyone pays $130. Americans save $110. Europeans pay $110 more. Big Pharma profits stay the same. He's not destroying the industry. He's redistributing the burden globally. Strategy number 3, institutional capture. Trump ended the most serious conflicts of interest in the FDA, quote unquote. RFK Jr. is leading the government-wide assault on corporate influence in health agencies. The plan? To make every health decision based on independent science, not industry funding, unquote. Again, I fully understand that there's criticism to go around. People are saying, well, this isn't happening fast enough. That's not happening fast enough. It's not on our timeline. And it's deeper than what Sarah Westall can understand. And as far as the timeline, well, it's not on Neon Revolt's timeline either. I mean, yes, there are alarming things happening because that's the world that we live in. But we can't wave a magic wand and snap our fingers and have everything, again, sort of be reset and go back to normal. And the number of people, again, who don't know not only how bad it was, but how bad it was going to be is overwhelming too. Again, I will always have concerns with the wireless body area network. I'll always have concerns with those NGOs that write those papers, have those conferences, publish what they publish, talking about what a great thing it is, and we all need to participate, and it's even going to be here whether we know it or not, and it's already here, and I mean, I'm fully aware of all of it. I don't like any of it either. But I just know that we have to recognize this stuff. We have to research it. We have to look it up. We have to share it with one another because we're all Americans. And at the end of the day, we get to not participate to some extent too. Some of it's inescapable, which is, it's awful. But I also don't have to put needles in my body. And I don't have to eat trash food. And I get to exercise, eat right, and do things like that. And so do you. And that's a good thing. But we don't have to sit around and be sad all day long and, and depressed and yell at strangers on the internet. That's not productive either. And of course, closing our minds off to the truth and just going, no, I don't want to learn about that. That's not productive either. Again, I'll end with this. I got a nice email from, I don't know if they're a listener of the show. I don't think that they've ever even listened to the show. But they came across my Gab posts having to do with the Minneapolis fake school shooting. And they openly said that they were surprised that they saw it because they didn't know that I was, again, in that particular area on social media. And they said that they were in another group having to do, again, with these fake hoaxes and a number of other things. And they were like, you're right on point with all of this. You made your email address readily available, so I figured I'd email you and I'd just say thank you for what you're doing, and you're 100% right, and they're completely shocked that more people aren't talking about it. They can't understand why apparently, whatever they said, 0.001% of the population is actually talking about those particular psychological operations the way that they actually are, and that they're not actually real. And again, it was very kind email, and I appreciate it. I'm not the only person that picks up on the fake school shootings. A lot of people do because it's human behavior. Authentic human behavior is easy to pick out, but lunatic human behavior and irrational human behavior and whatever you want to call it, scripted human behavior is also very easy to pick out. Certainly, again, if a person is awake and knows what rational behavior looks like and sounds like. If a person is grieving the loss of their child, do they run to a microphone with a smile on their face and tell everybody about it? Or are they secluded, depressed, going through the stages of grief and crying randomly at different times of the day? I mean, that's usually what a person does when they lose a loved one, is the latter explanation or the latter example. It's not the former. They don't go, well, time to run to a microphone and, giggle my way through talking about my murdered kid. That just doesn't work that way. But it's also that people don't want to believe that they're being deceived. They don't want to believe that they're being lied to. I understand that aspect also. I fully get it. But again, closing a person's mind off to particular avenues of information, I should say, that maybe they haven't thought about is not a good idea. Again, I didn't hear any comments from a Neon Revolt or even Sarah Westall or, again, many of these individuals with all these so-called followers and cliques, not, openly talking about that fake school shooting. I mean, that right there exposes them, does it not? So no, I'm not interested in clicks. I'm not interested in likes or shares. I'm interested in figuring out what the truth is and then sharing it and giving people things to think about. That's all. That's the point. It's always been the point of this show. The point of this show, again, was rooted in exposing child abuse because of the whole COVID lie. All kinds of individuals are running for school board members in American school districts across the United States. I'd love to see all the schools shut down. You know my take on the entire thing. But individuals, again, are attempting to run for particular positions here. And one of the positions, which should be brought up in my humble opinion, is the COVID lie. That many of these people who sit on these school boards and that are now, again, losing their positions or, again, are attempting to continue to hold on to their positions, they should be called out because they haven't apologized for anything. They encouraged people to take poisonous shots. They had children wear masks, all for nothing. All for a giant lie because strangers on TV told them to. That right there is a campaign issue. That's a campaign slogan. This school board member will do whatever the strangers on TV tell them. That's how easily manipulated they are. Don't be manipulated. Not to mention, where's my apology? Where's the apology to all of the people that you deceived because you were deceived? It'd be interesting to see, again, how many people run on that particular issue. I bet they don't, because it's probably too, quote-unquote, controversial for them. But it's important. It was child abuse, after all. It was human abuse. Very good adults were abused during that process, too, who work within the education business and every business. And there hasn't been a single apology from the education system, not one. Therein lies the problem. They've learned nothing, which means they're destined to repeat that kind of behavior again regarding endless other issues. So that's my political tip for school board members. Call them out on that lie. There is no COVID. It doesn't exist. Shots are poisonous. Masks were useless. You made our kids walk around with plastic dividers, step on the sticker, blah, 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 blah. All for what? Thanks for listening as always, everybody. I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.